The Last Samurai, Part 11. Whispers of Ash and Thunder. The storm had passed, but silence was not peace. Kage sat beneath a twisted cherry blossom tree, its petals long dead, its trunk scarred by war. In the air hung the scent of rain and fire, a reminder of what they had survived. Not what they had won. The battlefield behind them was empty now, save for the broken armor and burnt flags fluttering like dying birds. I always thought, when the war ended, I'd feel something. But all I feel is tired. He muttered the words, not really to anyone, yet someone always listened. From the shadows, Ray emerged. She carried with her a bundle wrapped in white cloth, stained faintly with crimson. Her eyes, as ever, carried the wisdom of centuries and the recklessness of a fox. Peace doesn't come after war, she said, handing him the bundle. It hides during it. Inside the cloth was a blade. Old. Cracked. But still breathing. Kage felt it, even before he unsheathed it. The soul inside the steel trembled like a ghost longing to speak. It had once belonged to the shogun of the Northern Empire, now nothing more than dust and myth. Ray sat beside him with a grin, poking at his leg with a stick. Did you know samurai used to name their swords? Maybe you should call it whiny blade that complains like you. Kage chuckled, despite himself. Maybe you'll call it Ray's mouth, since it never shuts. Even the strongest of steel breaks if the spirit behind it falters. Behind their teasing, something more serious pulsed. The journey ahead was not over. A city slept beyond the mountain range, one untouched by the fires of war. And yet, in that untouched silence, a new danger brewed, rumors of an artifact buried beneath the Shrine of 10 Winds, one said to control time itself. I heard the monks guard it with riddles, Ray said, chewing on dried fruit. The last one went something like, the more of me you take, the more you leave behind. Footsteps, Kage said. See? You'd make a great monk. All you need now is a bald head and less sass. Kage stood, wrapping the blade in his cloak. His gaze turned eastward, toward the mountains that clawed at the heavens like ancient beasts. The wind howled, no longer with pain, but warning. We move at dawn, he said. Ray rolled her eyes. We always move at dawn. Can't we move at, I don't know, brunch? 2 days later. They reached the shrine gates by nightfall. The stone steps were cracked, swallowed by moss and shadow. Paper lanterns swayed despite the windless air. Something watched them, not with eyes, but with presence. Inside the shrine, a monk waited. Tall. Cloaked in red. His face hidden by a straw hat. He spoke not with voice, but thought. One path leads to time. One leads to truth. One leads to madness. Which do you choose? Ray stepped forward. Can I choose all three? I like to keep my options open. The monk did not laugh. Neither did Kage. I choose truth, he said. The ground shifted. Stone gave way to water. And they fell. They landed in a realm of mirrors. Reflections of themselves stared back, not just who they were, but who they could have been. A younger Kage, bloodied and vengeful. A version of Ray dressed in imperial robes, her smile cruel and empty. Those who abandon their path are scum. But those who abandon their friends are worse. Ray looked at her reflection and whispered, I would never wear that dress. Suddenly, the reflections cracked. From behind the mirror, a figure stepped forward, cloaked like Kage, face half-shadowed, eyes glowing with blue fire. I am your doubt, the figure said. And I have grown strong while you ran. Kage stepped forward, sword in hand. Then it's time you faced the sun. The battle was swift, but not easy. Each strike against his mirrored self echoed in his chest like thunder. Each word spoken was a wound. You couldn't save your brother. You fight for peace, but bring only fire. You are no samurai. You're a ghost. A hero is not one who never falls, but the one who rises again. And again. And again. At last, with a roar, Kage shattered the final mirror. The figure vanished, and with it, the realm collapsed. They awoke beneath the shrine altar. The blade Kage carried now pulsed with quiet light. Etched on its steel were new words, words that hadn't been there before. Face not only your enemies. Face yourself. Ray looked at him, sweat dripping, breath shallow. Was it all a dream? No, Kage said. It was the test. She grinned, flopping back onto the stone. Well, I hope the next trial involves less trauma and more snacks. That night. By the campfire, as the moon bled through clouds like silver veins, Kage stared into the flames. Ray handed him a rice ball, misshapen but edible. So? Still planning to save the world? He nodded. But not alone. When you give up, that's when the game is truly over. The Last Samurai, Part 12. The Temple of the Forgotten Wind. Dawn cracked across the sky like the first breath after drowning. The mountains loomed above them, jagged, ancient, cold. But colder still was the silence that greeted them as they followed the narrow path winding toward the Temple of the Forgotten Wind. No birds. No rustling leaves. Just the sound of their boots on gravel, and the slow creaking of the air like 1,000 voices holding their breath. Ray sneezed suddenly, loud and dramatic. Do temples always smell like old socks and ghosts? Kage didn't smile. His hand rested on the sword that now bore the whisper of the shrine's message. His steps were slower, more careful. Ever since the mirror trial, had felt something different inside him. As if his soul no longer answered only to him. The entrance to the temple was carved into the face of a cliff, half hidden by hanging roots and thick fog. 2 stone lions flanked the broken door. Their eyes glowed faintly, as if judging every soul that passed. A samurai does not knock. A samurai enters. Inside was worse. They walked into dust, into stillness, into time itself. The air was thick, heavy not with moisture, but with memory. The walls were carved with murals long faded, showing men with wings, stars falling from the sky, and a blade with 7 eyes. Ray whispered, I don't like how this place feels. Like it remembers me. Kage stepped ahead, ignoring the chill that kissed his neck. It remembers everyone. The Chamber of Names. At the center of the temple was a circular hall with no ceiling, only sky, and wind that moaned like a crying child. Names were written on every inch of the stone walls in hundreds of languages. Kage reached out to touch one. The moment his fingers met the stone, pain shot through his spine. His vision blurred. He saw a child with his face, screaming as fire consumed a village. A woman's voice calling his name, then silence. Ray dying in a field of white grass, blood on her lips. A black tower rising from a sea of bones. And then, nothing. Ray shook him, yelling something, but he couldn't hear. Then a voice, not hers, echoed through the hall. To walk forward, one must die 1,000 times in memory. A figure descended from the broken ceiling, walking through air like it was solid. He wore no armor. No shoes. His face was hidden by a mask of white bone, and in his hands he held no blade, only a flute carved from obsidian. He spoke not in words, but in emotion. You carry the echo. Kage stood, unsheathing his sword. And you carry danger. The masked figure tilted its head. You fear what you are becoming. Ray stepped forward, annoyed. Is this some kind of cult speech, or are we supposed to understand the riddles by vibe alone? The figure raised its hand, and wind swirled violently. The names on the wall peeled off like dry leaves, rising into the sky. You seek the origin flame. But you are not ready. Try us, Kage growled. The battle began without warning. The figure played its flute, and the air itself turned to blades. Wind screamed. Shadows danced. Kage dodged one, deflected another, but a third sliced his cheek. Blood kissed the floor. Ray summoned a burst of light from her palm. Bad flute. Go practice somewhere else. The wind howled louder. The figure split into 3, then 10 illusions, moving like lightning. Kage closed his eyes. The blade listens. He moved with instinct. With memory. He struck through the illusions, through sound, through fear, and found flesh. The real figure gasped. The flute shattered. The wind died. The silence that followed was complete. After the storm, the figure lay still. As it faded into ash, it whispered, "The flame sleeps beneath the garden of bone. But beware. The queen watches." Ray sat heavily on a fallen pillar, panting. So? New enemy, new location, and now a queen? What's next? Flying lizards? Talking corpses? Kaige stared into the distance. "I don't know," he said. "But we keep walking. It's not about whether you're chosen. It's about what you choose when no one is watching." That night, their camp was small, built at the edge of a cliff overlooking a valley of red trees. Ray cooked something questionable in a pot and handed him a bowl. "Tastes like betrayal and mushrooms." He took a bite. "That's an insult to mushrooms." She grinned, eyes catching the flicker of the firelight. "You think we'll make it?" Kaige looked up at the stars, so far and yet somehow closer tonight. "I don't know. But I'll die trying." A man dies when he is forgotten. So let's make damn sure we're remembered. The Last Samurai, Part 13. The Garden of Eyes. The morning fog hung thick over the valley as Kage and Yori made their way toward the so-called Garden of Eyes, a cursed forest rumored to be watched by unseen spirits. The trees stood like silent sentinels, their branches tangled like the web of forgotten truths. Every step was heavy, like walking through a memory soaked in blood. Yori whistled softly, breaking the silence. "Ever feel like the forest is judging you? Like it's waiting for you to slip up?" Kaige grunted. "Judgment is a blade sharper than any sword." They paused before an ancient shrine carved into a moss-covered rock. Strange symbols flickered faintly on its surface. Kage traced a finger over the runes, feeling the cold pulse beneath them. "Power comes not from will, but from the act of making things happen," Yori murmured. "Funny how everyone wants power but no one wants the weight it brings." Kage nodded, eyes narrowed. True strength is carrying the burden, not denying it. Suddenly, a rustling from the thicket. Shadowy figures stepped into the dim light, members of the Phantom Eyes, a cult devoted to watching and judging souls. Their leader, cloaked in black silk, stepped forward. "You who walk the path of ruin," he hissed, "the eyes see through your lies. Are you ready to face yourself?" Kage stepped forward, sword drawn. "I've faced shadows darker than you." The battle erupted like a storm, blades flashing, spirits screaming. Kage's sword sang with silver fire, cutting through illusions and flesh alike. Yet the Phantom Eyes were relentless, their gaze piercing his soul with every strike. Between clashes, Kage heard a voice echo in his mind, "The hole in your heart is a gateway, not a weakness." He remembered another saying, "Fear binds, but courage breaks chains." As the last of the cultists fell, Yori grinned. "Well, that was rude." Kaige wiped sweat from his brow. The forest wasn't kidding about watching. They pressed deeper into the garden. Kage's blade pulsed stronger, the ancient wolf spirit restless within it. At the heart of the forest stood a mirror pool, perfectly still. Kage gazed into it, seeing not just his reflection, but every choice, every regret. A voice whispered softly, "The past is a story told by the living to the dead." Yori poked him with a stick. "You look like you saw a ghost." Kage smirked. "Maybe I did." They camped by the pool, shadows dancing like spirits in the firelight. Yuri laughed. "You know, some samurai used to say, better to be a fool for a moment than a coward for a lifetime." Kage raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like you." Touché. As night deepened, Kage felt the weight of his mission more keenly. The Garden of Eyes had stripped him bare, but also shown him what he had to protect and what he had to become. From the darkness, a whisper, "Even the darkest night will end and the sun will rise." The Last Samurai, Part 14. The Ascent of Mount Megami. The path wound steeply upward, carved into the jagged spine of Mount Megami. The air thinned with every step, sharp and biting like a blade's edge. Kage's breath came in ragged bursts, every muscle screamed for rest, but the mountain demanded more. Behind him, Yuri struggled to keep pace, stumbling once but laughing it off. "You know, this mountain's a real jerk," he said, panting. "Like the universe's way of saying, you wanna be a samurai? Prove it." Kage allowed a faint smile. "Every summit begins with a single painful step." Yuri grinned. "I like your style, Deathblade. Keep the Zen jokes coming." The higher they climbed, the colder the wind became, carrying whispers from the peak. The voices wove ancient warnings: he who climbs alone finds the sharpest stones. At a narrow ledge, the wind tore at Kage's robes, threatening to throw him into the abyss below. He steadied himself, gripping his sword hilt tightly. "Mount Megami is no ordinary mountain," Yuri said, eyes gleaming. "They say it's a gate between worlds, where spirits test the souls of the living." Kage's gaze hardened. "Then I will meet them head-on." As they neared the summit, ghostly figures materialized, former samurai, their armor cracked and faces pale, watching silently. Their eyes held a challenge. Kage stepped forward. "I seek balance, not conquest." One spirit nodded slowly. "Balance is the dance of shadow and light." Suddenly, the sky darkened. A storm surged, lightning splitting the air, thunder shaking the ground. The mountain seemed to roar, shaking the very core of Kage's being. Lightning struck near Kage, illuminating a figure cloaked in black. An ancient rival returned. "You think yourself ready?" The figure sneered. "But a lesson without pain is meaningless." Their clash was thunder and steel, echoing through the mountains. Kage's blade burned with the wolf's fire, every strike pushed him beyond his limits. Amidst the battle, a voice echoed in his mind: "Fear is not evil. It tells you what your weakness is." With a final, desperate strike, Kage felled his foe. The storm ceased, the sky cleared, and the first rays of dawn kissed the peak. Yuri laughed breathlessly. "You're not just climbing a mountain, you're climbing yourself." Kage looked out over the world below, the battlefield of two empires reduced to ashes, waiting for rebirth. Even the darkest night will end and the sun will rise. He sheathed his sword. The journey was far from over. The Last Samurai, Part 15. The New Dawn, Fire and Water. The dawn broke over the ruins of the ancient battlefield, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold. The air was thick with the scent of ash and the faint hum of lingering magic. Kage stood at the edge of the valley, his breath steady, his gaze fixed on the horizon where two rivers, one blazing with molten fire, the other shimmering with liquid crystal, met and intertwined. This was the land where the new era was to be born, a place of balance between destruction and creation. He felt the weight of the wolf's spirit coursing through his veins, the blade at his side alive with a quiet fire. The scars from battles past throbbed with every heartbeat, reminders of sacrifices made and those yet to come. Around him, the remnants of clans, survivors of the Great War, gathered with wary hope in their eyes. Yuri approached, juggling a small bundle of wild herbs and grinning despite the tension. "You know, Deathblade, for a guy who talks about balance, you sure have a knack for making a mess." Kage smirked. "Balance isn't about perfection, Yuri. It's about embracing the chaos within." The council gathered at the meeting place, a great stone circle scorched by ancient flames but still standing strong. Leaders of surviving tribes, former enemies turned uneasy allies, took their places. Tension hung in the air like a storm ready to break. Kage stepped forward, the firelight dancing across his weathered face. "This land has known only war and ruin for too long. We are its children, and it is our duty to heal it." A grizzled elder from the Fire Clan spoke, his voice rough yet passionate. "Words are easy. Actions harder." Kage nodded. "Then let our actions speak." The task was immense. To rebuild trust among fractured clans, to cleanse the land of the lingering curses that poisoned the rivers and forests. Each day brought new challenges: hostile spirits, sabotage from those who preferred chaos, and the ever-present shadow of the bogeyman, lurking at the edges of their vision. Yet Kage moved forward, his blade a beacon, his resolve unshakable. At night, he found moments of quiet with Yori by the campfire. You ever think about what comes after all this? Yori asked one evening, tossing a stick into the flames. Kage stared into the fire's glow. Peace is not a place but a journey. One I hope we walk together. Yori chuckled. Wise words from a guy who once ran from his own shadow. Kage's gaze darkened briefly. We all run from something. The blade pulsed stronger as Kage approached the sacred spring, the source of the crystal river. It was said the waters could purify not only the land but the soul itself. He knelt, dipping the tip of his sword into the shimmering liquid. The water hissed softly, the wolf's spirit awakening deeper within the blade. From the shadows, a voice whispered, You carry the past, but your future is yours to write. Kage looked up, eyes meeting those of a young girl, her presence serene yet powerful. Who are you? He asked. The guardian of balance, she replied. I have watched your journey. You have the strength to unite fire and water, to end the cycle. The final challenge awaited at the heart of the valley, a manifestation of the bogeyman's true form, a monstrous amalgamation of shadow and flame. Kage gripped his sword tighter, feeling the wolf's roar inside him. Fear is not evil. It tells you what your weakness is, he whispered, recalling the words that had carried him thus far. The battle was fierce and unrelenting, fire clashing with water, shadow meeting blade. Every strike was a test of will, every movement a dance between light and dark. At one point, Kage faltered, the darkness pressing in. A voice echoed, A man grows most tired standing still. Summoning his last reserves, Kage rose, the wolf's spirit blazing brighter than ever. With a final, decisive blow, the bogeyman shattered, dissolving into embers and mist. As silence fell, the rivers calmed, the forest sighed in relief, and the people began to believe once more. Kage sheathed his sword, the glow fading but never gone. Yori clapped him on the shoulder. You did it, Deathblade. You really did. Kage smiled, exhaustion and hope mingling in his eyes. Better to be a fool for a moment than a coward for a lifetime, he said softly. Yori laughed. Told you I like your style. The new era had begun, not born of conquest, but of balance. Kage looked to the horizon where fire met water, the sun rising on a land ready to heal. He knew the road ahead would still be hard, but for the first time in a long while, he felt ready. Because sometimes, the greatest battles are fought not with sword or spell, but within the heart. The end.